Stan Mathabatha has been re-elected as the chairperson of the ANC in Limpopo, beating Dixon Masemola. However, the ANC is now faced with the task of finding Mathabatha's replacement as the province's premier in 2024. South Africa's constitution states that no person may hold office as premier for more than 2 terms. Let's zoom in now to the ANC Limpopo politics. I'm joined by political analyst Asanda Ngoasheng. Asanda, thank you so much for joining us. Now, we know that yesterday Stanley Mathabatha had now been re-elected for a 3rd term at the provincial helm of the Limpopo province. What could we say are some of his successes from the time that he's been in office as a premier?
Well, I mean, I think that we must remember that when he came into power, the Limpopo government was really in disarray, and it had just come out of being under administration. But I think he did do some good. But the problem with the Limpopo province is that, like many of South Africa's rural provinces, it really struggles to deliver the best leadership available in the province, because like all provinces, they face a brain drain, and so the best people in each political party and the best people in each industry are actually in other provinces because their own province doesn't have capacity for them. And then the second problem that we have is that these rural communities are run very much on patronage lines and run very much on who knows who, and links to big sort of surnames and links to those who are politically in power become very important. And so in a way that urban communities have the same problems, but they're exasperated in rural communities. We have situations in rural communities where even the best leadership constantly will fail to deliver because patronage becomes even more important than any kind of service delivery. And rural people, unfortunately, have shown themselves to be very loyal to the ANC. If you look at, how the ANC has performed in urban areas compared to rural areas, you'll see that there's a lot of loyalty still in the ANC, which doesn't exist as much in the urban space anymore.
Now, we do know that his term in office will expire in 2024 when the country goes to the polls for national government. And he will not then be able to lead for a 3rd term, as it is unconstitutional for someone to hold an office in government for over 2 terms. So what do we think is then going to happen with him being the regional chairperson, or the provincial chairperson rather, of the ANC? What will then happen to that position of premier? Who do we predict could possibly then take on the baton from then onwards?
Well, there's a number of people, but you must remember that one of the powerful politicians in the ANC has had to step aside in Caesar because he was involved in VBS. So it's possible that depending on how the charges and the court case goes, that he may make a comeback if he's cleared somehow of corruption. And there's also other political contenders like Lehanyane, who seems to have been sidelined, but he'll have 5 years in order to kind of regroup and reconstitute his own support. And there are many others that may well spring up in the coming 5 years. And I think that, the ANC is a political party that is in decline. And what's happening now is that even at a national level, people who used to know they guaranteed seats at national are now finding themselves without that guarantee. And so we may see some shifting in political power in provinces where people who were at national are now going to be pushing to get into positions of power at provincial level because there are less and less spaces. And if you look at, some of the predictions that have been made for 2024, we're already seeing that chances of the ANC getting, a majority by a high margin are very slim. And in fact, most political analysts are predicting that we're looking at the ANC getting less than 50%, or if it does by some miracle get 50%, it's probably going to be 51, anything from 51 up until about 55, which means you're going to have a lot of people who used to sit at a national level who suddenly find themselves without positions. And of course, we know the nature of the ANC is that you have a strong base at a community level, then you have a strong base at a provincial level, and that's how you get to national. And so we might see a lot of national leaders now stepping back into the provincial power bases.
I mean, there is speculation that Mathabatha does want to move to national. He did also say yesterday that he's got no intention of going to Lutuli House and that the work that he needs to do is still at provincial provincial level. But we also know that he was one of the first provincial chairs that were openly pronouncing that President Cyril Ramaphosa should return for a second term, and others criticized him at the January 8th celebrations, saying that is a little too premature.
Yeah, I mean, of course, one will always want to declare their allegiance as early on as possible, because declaring your allegiance quite early, it means that if Cyril Ramaphosa is indeed put as the president of the ANC in the upcoming elections in December, then he's almost sort of guaranteed a seat, potentially even at a national level, if that's what he desires, because he would have been seen as somebody who has been pushing for the ANC to be able to receive the seats that they need for December, and as somebody who has been declaring Cyril Ramaphosa already as a winner. And I mean, I think it's always hilarious for me, or it's always interesting to see how the ANC people like to claim and pretend like there isn't lobbying, like there isn't contestation of power happening, and yet we all know that there's contestation of power happening all the time, and that people are basically politically lobbying each other for positions literally permanently, because, you know, we know that every 5 years there's a conference, we know that there's an election in South Africa every 5 years, and so a 5-year period is a very small period to wait until the end to start declaring your allegiance, or to start, you know, telling people that you want the position. And so people are spending literally their terms in power trying to make sure that they're guaranteed for the next 5 years. And so it's not surprising that he, or anybody else for that matter, would have made such declarations.
Speaking of declarations, and just in terms of the road to December, where we're seeing a lot of the ANC leaders wanting to take part and take leadership, there was the step-aside resolution, of course, put in place for leaders such as the current SG, but we know that it had hit back on other leaders such as Dan Msiza in the Limpopo province. I mean, the nomination process was quite dramatic, and him having to pull out because of, like you mentioned earlier on, the corruption charges that are against him for VBS. Are we going to see possibly some of the leaders that are within the RTT forces being able to stand for elections, such as the current SG, when it comes to the December conference?
Yeah, I mean, I think the step-aside rule, if and when it is implemented, is going to hit a lot of people, and I think it might even hit some of Cyril Ramaphosa's allies as well, because his camp is not completely clean and is not without people who are involved in corruption. I mean, even the camp of Stanley itself has some members who have been somehow involved in VBS, and you must remember that VBS is a big deal in Limpopo, because most of the municipalities that gave their money to this investment scam were from the Limpopo province, and the very people who are suffering and unable to get any services, and unable to access water, and unable to access, basics such as having their sanitation improved, it's precisely because of VBS. And I think that, VBS is one of those things that the government of the day is going to have to take very seriously, because it has a direct impact on people, because it was municipal money that was used. And I think personally that one of the biggest mistakes that we make in South Africa is that we focus so much on national politics and what's happening at a national level, and we ignore what's happening at a municipal level, whereas local government is the site of government. It is the touch point that people have with government, and if local government is failing and there's no service delivery, then there's no government. And if the people at the local government are your weakest people, then you effectively are creating an ineffective government. And that's what's happened with the ANC, that they focus on putting their best people at national and some of their better people at provincial level, and they ignored completely local government. And this is what's coming back to to bite them, because people are feeling that there's lack of service delivery, and people are feeling the incompetence of the leaders that they have placed in local government, and that is why they're getting less and less votes. And so part of whatever effort Cyril Ramaphosa needs to make in order to shift things around as part of his recovery is to make sure that some strong leaders are placed at local government so that they can do the cleanup that is required, and some strong leaders are placed at provincial government so that they can also do the cleanup that's required. Because there's no point in having, a big cleanup at national government when provincial is rotten and when municipal level is rotten. And if you ask anyone in South Africa who's living currently in a South African municipality, they'll tell you that the destruction of South Africa is happening at district level. And until that is sorted out and until that is looked into properly and the capacity that's needed is given, we're not going to go anywhere. That's why every single year you're seeing the Auditor General talking about, the municipality being the place where we need to start cleaning out corruption and the place where we need to start focusing our attention on, because all those, all the places where there's red flags in terms of accounting, in terms of being able to account for money spent, most of it is happening at a municipal level. And that's a lot of money, I think, for the South African taxpayer to not want any accountability. And I think it's a lot of money also for government to allow people to continue to operate, for example, without, a financial manager that's qualified or people in place who are able to develop capacity, train, and do what is required in order for these municipalities to get their act together.
No, most certainly. And we are seeing a lot of the NEC members that are speaking at these elective conferences, giving advice to everyone that has been elected and saying to them, ensure that we're fixing things from the ground up in order for us to restore unity and to restore our brand as the ANC. Thank you so much for your input there, Asanda Ngoasheng.